It's no secret that the year is ending and we're all about to put another chapter of our lives into stone. Now, whether you're someone who loves setting New Year's resolutions or someone that thinks that setting goals should be a constant thing throughout the year, I still think that the new year is something that makes all of us a bit more reflective, introspective, and hopeful. 2023 was, without a doubt, one of the best years I've ever had when it comes to my schooling, my fitness, my family, my social life, and just my overall happiness. On the flip side, 2022 was one of the worst years I've ever had in my life when it comes to all of those things, and I can give you a laundry list of reasons why it was so bad, but I think there'd be more value out of me kind of telling my story. 2022 was really bad for me for a lot of reasons, but one of the biggest and most obvious reasons was because I was struggling in school. I was in a situation where if I failed, I would have to repeat the year, so I studied with very unsustainable habits that eventually led to me burning out. Long story short, my fear of failure became a self-fulfilling prophecy that led me to failing and repeating the year. This was really difficult for me to deal with because I felt like I was wasting an opportunity in the position that I worked so hard to put myself in. And not only that, but I felt really isolated because I moved halfway across the country to go to medical school. And out of embarrassment, out of shame, I didn't really reach out to anybody. I didn't really go and talk to anyone about my problems. On top of just failing that year of medical school, my unhealthy habits that got me there also bled into my fitness, my relationships, my family life, my social life, and again, my overall happiness. I didn't work out as much as I normally would like to, and if you're like me, physical activity is a cornerstone of my life that grounds me and lets me disconnect. On top of that, I ate a really unhealthy diet because that's how I coped a lot of the time with the stress of school. Before exams, after exams, while studying for exams, it was just a lot of fast food. On top of that, since I barely had any time to go out and hang out with friends, I felt like I had to overcompensate. I started to have an unhealthy relationship with alcohol, and binge drinking wasn't out of the norm for me. And all of those habits and all of those things were so against what I stand for as a person and my personal values that I really started to look at myself a lot differently. I started to look at myself and think of myself in a very negative light. And yes, I do understand that almost every single thing that I mentioned was self-inflicted. Now, the ending of 2022 was what made 2023 so great for me. I took a leave of absence from school in the spring, and I got to go home, visit some of my friends, reconnect with them, and it made me realize that whatever happened to me professionally wasn't the end of my life, and I still had the opportunity to go turn it around. I attended officer training school over the summer and was able to really focus on myself. I met a lot of great people and friends during this time, and even more when I started up medical school again. This time around, I drew boundaries with school and prioritized my health and happiness first. And surprise, I actually ended up doing way better in school. I also promised to live with more agency and intention in my life. I would do things that I've always wanted to do, regardless of what others would think. That's how this YouTube channel started. With all of that leading into the beginning of this year, I felt like I finally had the momentum that I was missing. Physically, I've never felt better than I did this year. I started to cook all my own meals and ended up losing a lot of weight. And losing weight wasn't just about appearances. I felt like the weight represented a lot of the negative habits that I developed over time, and me losing that weight was me shedding those bad habits too. I also don't feel the need to drink alcohol anymore. I never liked bar hopping, I never liked clubbing, and I still do enjoy the occasional beer with friends, but I don't really feel attached to drinking alcohol in order to socialize and have a good time anymore. And because of that, I'm able to distance myself from that habit very easily. I set the goal of running a half marathon and I ended up running 2 full marathons instead. School is going so much better. And I was able to reconnect with some of my friends, and we planned some pretty amazing trips this year. I went to Coachella, where I discovered a lot of new artists. I went to Lovers and Friends to see some of my favorite childhood artists too. Got to celebrate my best friend's engagement at his bachelor party, and a lot more. I also worked through my last summer break ever in order to afford all of that. I taught elementary school students at a summer school program, which is a pretty awesome experience too. I was a teacher for 2 years prior to medical school, and this was the last chance I had to use my certification. So what changed? How did I manage to transform my life in about a year? Well, let's get to that. So one of the things that I found really strange was a lot of the times we wait until we hit rock bottom before we start to self-reflect. And a reason for that might be because we just needed a wake-up call. At least that's what it was for me. After officially being put on a leave of absence, I sat there with myself for about a week to just think and reflect on the things in my life that I was unhappy about. And the goal here was to give myself an honest assessment. What did I like about what I was doing? What did I not like about what I was doing? I really wanted to avoid any self-hating and self-loathing. That wasn't really the goal here. The goal was to figure out in what areas of my life I wanted to be better at. It took me a couple of days of tearing myself down to get past that point and really focus on, improvement and focusing on what I can actually work on. So if you're finding yourself, really beating yourself down to the ground and just self-hating, Just try to get past that. It takes a little bit of time, but once you're past that, you can see things a little bit more clearly. I eventually got to the point where I was able to be completely honest with myself. Why was I too proud to seek guidance and advice? Why was I saying yes to things that I didn't actually want to do? Why was I doing things that didn't align with my own values? The past events leading you to hit rock bottom are important to learn from, but you don't want to loom there too long. What's important next is looking forward to where you want to be and working backwards from there. One of the most powerful exercises that really helped me envision my life was to picture yourself a year from now, 3 years from now, or 5 years from now, right? Where do you ideally want to be in those set time frames? I thought about it like a movie. The version of myself that I imagined was the ending, and the situation I was in was the beginning of the movie. What steps would it take to get to that ending? What would the training arc look like? What kind of evolution would I have to go through, and what kind of habits and thoughts did I need to leave behind? Now, if you have where you want to be a year from now in the forefront of your mind, right? That's when you start working backwards. How does each quarter of the next year look to you to get to that ultimate goal, right? And then after you break it down by quarter, how does each month look like to you? And then week. That's how you go from having a really big vision to breaking it down into more digestible steps. I created a vision board for myself of the things that I wanted to accomplish. And just like in the movies, achieving them and getting to the end goal wasn't what actually mattered. It's everything in between, the journey. That's where the magic actually happens. If a movie just gave you the beginning and let the protagonist become the hero who saves the day without anything in between, there's no payoff. There's no lesson. It's the trials and tribulations that the hero goes through that makes the story. So you're the hero of your own story, and that path that you created for yourself by envisioning where you want it to be a year from now and breaking it down, that's the journey, that's the personal hero's journey that you have to embark on in order to actually make it happen. And that means accepting that your diet wasn't healthy and that you need to start doing better. That means accepting that you are neglecting your physical health and start taking steps to actually improve that aspect of your life. It means accepting that you haven't been living the life you want because you're being held back by your family, your peers, and what they might say about you if you veered from the path that you're currently on. For me, it was all of the above. Now, I think it's important to say that the map that you created for yourself that helps you get to that vision that you're working towards, right? That's there to keep you accountable. But at the same time, you also don't want to be held prisoner by it. It's there to give you a sense of direction, but inevitably, as we work towards our goals, we learn more and more things, we gain new perspectives, you might have to adjust the sails a little bit and adjust your goals, and that's okay too. For example, in the beginning of this year, 2023, I said that I would run a half marathon because I've never ran more than 1.5 miles at one go before. I hated cardio, but I knew it was good for me, so I challenged myself to run a half marathon. Well, it turns out that I was kind of selling myself short. I found that out maybe a couple months into actually training for it. So I ended up running 2 full marathons instead. On the flip side of things, in the beginning of the year, I challenged myself to get involved in medical research and either do some kind of talk, share a poster, or present something or publish something this year. And I didn't get involved with medical research at all. Not because I couldn't or didn't have the opportunity to, but because I just didn't feel really passionate about it. I didn't want to do research for the sake of doing research to check a box for residency applications, even though it could possibly make me look more competitive for residencies, right? It just wasn't something that I was passionate about, and I wanted to actually focus my attention on something that I could actually talk about passionately. The lesson behind me sharing these 2 stories is to highlight that you're supposed to make a decision based on your values and your goals, not out of fear or lack of belief. If you're gonna adjust your goals that you set for yourself, make sure it's because it's more aligned with your values and goals and not because you don't think you can do it. Once you've laid out your goals and you have your vision in mind and you work backwards enough to know what the next steps are and where to focus your energy on, the next thing that you have to do, and it's huge, is committing yourself to your vision. This past year, my definition of what commitment was completely shifted, right? It completely evolved. Back then, like a lot of people, I thought that commitment was like signing a contract. It's just one grandiose event that locks you in and you're locked into whatever you're committed to. But this year I realized that's not really the case. I've come to learn that commitment isn't a one-time thing, but it's a constant decision to take action based on your vision, right? Every single day you have to decide to do the right thing that works towards your goals. It's not just a one-time thing. And of course, there's gonna be days where making that decision is a lot harder than others. This is a lesson that I learned from running that is a great analogy for life. Signing up for a marathon isn't committing yourself to running it. The commitment comes from the thousands of decisions that you make to put one foot in front of the other just one more time. In the same vein, Every time you're met with some friction that forces you to make a decision between what aligns with your vision and what doesn't, commitment is making the decision that you know is best for you. Personally, this is what helped me not feel so overwhelmed with the goals that I set for myself this year. I mean, I lost 25 pounds this year, and just thinking about being on a calorie deficit for such an extended period of time, it was daunting. But you know what wasn't as daunting? Was just deciding not to cheat on my next meal, to actually eat clean for the next meal, and it was to not skip my next workout. Those small decisions were not nearly as daunting as thinking about the grand scheme of things. And there's going to be days and times within the day that you mess up, right? And you make the wrong decision. I made the wrong decisions a lot of the time too. But what matters is that you make the right decision more than you make the wrong one. So long as you're doing that, progress is inevitable, even if it comes a little bit slower. Those small decisions, day in and day out, that's what commitment is. That's where the magic comes from. One of the big lessons that I've learned from the past few years, but more so the last year and a half, was that self-confidence, being confident in yourself, isn't just blindly accepting the things that you don't like about yourself. And on the flip side of things, it's also not being delusional about your skill set, being delusional about, who you are as a person, and resulting in you becoming cocky or arrogant. My confidence comes from understanding who I am and understanding my core values as a person, and then taking actions based on those core values. Even if my reality doesn't necessarily reflect that yet, just knowing that I'm making progress and taking action based on those values, that helped me build a lot of confidence. I valued health and fitness, so every time I made a decision that aligned with this, I felt more confident. I value education and academics. I value friendship and camaraderie. Value family and quality time. These values drove my actions, and my actions built my confidence. Over time, and with every action that I took based on those values, I built more momentum for myself, and I built my stack of evidence just a little bit higher that shows me that I am who I say I am. My abilities are what I believe they are because I put in the work to perform at that level. Now I'm at the point where mentally, I know that I took on new challenges and learned new skills from the ground up, from absolute zero. And because of that, even when I'm trying something completely new, I have confidence that I can bring with me. And not confidence that I'll be great immediately or I'll be great at all, but the confidence to know that I can humble myself to the process of learning whatever skill or challenge it is, and I know that I will get better over time. One of my favorite sayings is that if you want to go fast, go alone. But if you want to go far, go together. Humans are social creatures, and we constantly long to be part of a tribe. We've all heard that saying where the people closest to you can actually mold you, and I believe that's true to a point. And one of the issues that I used to run into pretty often was I always felt like the people around me weren't vibrating at the same frequency that I was. And not necessarily in a I'm better than you way or in a very cocky or arrogant way, but just they're on their journey and I'm on mine. There were definitely times this year even where I felt like this. I felt like having different goals, becoming a physician, getting into certain athletic events, starting a YouTube channel. It led me to live a very compartmentalized life. There were some points where I felt like I had my medical school friends, my college friends, my YouTube friends, and just, different sections of myself, different friend groups, right? But luckily, it wasn't really always like that. I had my medical school friends that wanted to go on runs with me, and we had a really good time, and it was awesome. I had college friends, acquaintances that, asked me about my YouTube channel, asked about how they can get started, things like that. And that really helped me a lot. And I say all of that to say this. Not all of your friends are going to be interested in the same things that you're interested in. Not all of them are going to have the same goals that you're interested in, right? That doesn't make them any less of your friends. That's just life. And one of the mindset changes that I've started doing that really helped all my friendships is I don't really look at it from a lens of, oh, you just don't really understand me or get me. I look at it more in the lens of, wow, this is a great opportunity for me to learn about something that I normally wouldn't be exposed to. And if you feel like you don't have any friends you can talk to about the things that you are interested in, I think it's important to say that we have the internet here, right? You can find things to supplement your friend groups like my YouTube channel, other people's YouTube channel, different podcasts, different communities. You can really supplement your social groups and get connected to people that have very similar values and interests like you do. But let's not get it twisted here, all right? The journey of transforming yourself will feel very isolating at times, right? You're going to be fighting your own demons. You're going to be really working on the negative aspects of yourself, the parts that you don't like. And a lot of times that can feel very, very isolating because you're the only one that really gets where you're coming from. But even if you feel like no one can really understand your story, I do highly recommend you to talk about it anyways. One of the biggest realizations that I've had this year was through sharing my own stories and sharing my own progress, right? I've actually connected to a lot of people that I otherwise wouldn't have talked to. A lot of people reaching out to me, telling me about their own journeys and how they felt alone or how they handled certain situations that were similar to mine. You start to realize that even though we all have very isolated journeys of working on ourselves, there's a common ground there, and that's a common ground that you can connect to other people with. I had friends, acquaintances, and even complete strangers on the internet tell me their stories and connect with me, and we'd both share our stories, and we'd both leave that conversation much more inspired than we started it, right? And that's how you build a community, and that's how you go farther with people. Now, the biggest thing that I urge you to do throughout your journey is to remember the big picture. Remember your why. There are inevitably going to be days where you feel absolutely lost, absolutely deflated, days filled with blood, sweat, and a lot of tears, right? During these hard times, remember that you didn't start this journey just for the sake of having a six-pack. You didn't start this journey for the sake of honoring a few courses in medical school. You didn't start this journey just to have something to brag or show off, right? Those are all just external manifestations and byproducts of you working towards what your why actually is. And what your why actually is actually just feeling happy. Being happy about yourself, being confident about yourself, and just being comfortable with who you are. The past year to year and a half has been the most transformative years of my adult life. And in the darkest of moments, there were times I truly felt hateful towards myself for being in the predicament that I was in. During those times, reminding myself that I set out on this journey to embrace myself got me out of the negative headspace that I was in. I needed the constant reminder that acting out of hate towards myself wasn't what would actually get me to where I wanted to go, but acting out of love for myself would. On your guys' journey, be hard on yourself. Be stern. Keep yourself accountable, be strict. Don't talk yourself out of doing the things that you need to do. But in all of those things, do it from a place of love. Do it from a place of knowing that you weren't happy where you are, and you want to put yourself in a position where you're happy, where you're healthy, where you're confident, where you're comfortable with yourself. Give yourself some grace, understand that you're going to make mistakes, and that's okay as long as you learn from them, and really embrace the journey. So I love hearing from our community. I love hearing from you guys about the things that you're working on. So leave a comment down below and let me know in 2024, in the next few months, what do you want to accomplish and why? I'd love to hear it, so leave a comment down below and I'll see you guys in the next video.